Oh, we don't do weeks anymore. I've done too many. So this is where James and I we met while we were training as counsellors. Explore our experience and our understanding of faith. So yeah, and this week, last few weeks, we've been thinking about taboos in faith and in kind of spiritual circles. We're going to have a bit of a break. I say a break. James has wonderfully brought a quote that I think is really rich and will challenge and tease out things for us. So yeah, we're just here to talk honestly about this, and do share your comments if you want to. James, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, of course. I just to sort of give a bit of context. This is the reason, like I shared it with you, Tom, and why I thought this might be relevant is I find a lot of the time for myself, with my own spirituality and the way that it's kind of grown and developed and so on, is that I will find every now and then I'll find something that I'm reading or watching or like encounter in my everyday life that kind of spark something, because it kind of has a ring to it that makes me go, oh, I connect to that, or it challenges me in some way, or makes me go, yeah, no, I totally get that on a different level from maybe the source material is pitched at. So this is from a book called Children of June, which is a book by Frank Herbert. And it goes like this. So hopefully this come across as clearly as possible. I'm sure we can do like a thingy of it in the comments or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, absolutely.
How we'll do that. So it's a quote that goes: "Religion is the emulation of the adult by the child. Religion is the insistment of past beliefs, mythology, which is guesswork, the hidden assumptions of trust in the universe, those pronouncements which men have made in search of personal power, all of it mingled with shreds of enlightenment. And always the ultimate unspoken commandment is, thou shalt not question. But we question. We break that commandment as a matter of course. The work to which we have set ourselves is the liberating of the imagination, the harnessing of imagination to humankind's deepest sense of creativity." Yeah, and it's sort of quite a dense quote. I mean, I've noticed with reading his work, it is quite sort of, it's all very like sort of dense and like involved. But I came across that and I was like, oh wow, hang on, there's really something to that kind of gets me on a different level of just me reading a novel, and makes me go, oh, he's really touched on something here that makes me think and makes me go, oh yeah, hang on, how does that kind of relates to me and relates to my experience, and certainly what I've seen of of religion and church, and how it kind of affects my life and doesn't fit and doesn't work and stuff. It kind of resonates with all of the challenges he's bringing there. For example, he says there's like these this mythology and guesswork and hidden assumptions of trust in the universe, all of these sort of like preconceived ideas that we've taken on from our parents or from the adults around us, and that people have made, some of whom, and I say this because like I have a bit more of an attentive approach maybe than this statement, in the search for personal power. So where religion has been used as a platform for people seeking their own personal gain, and then all of it mingled with shreds of enlightenment. So the idea that there's spirituality or glimmers of what it truly means to be like in touch with something greater, all kind of interwoven throughout. So there's this kind of almost like a lure or bait for people to be drawn in on. And then like this whole not being able to question and not being allowed to challenge is very prevalent, or at least I've encountered that certainly in churches that I've been in, and this sort of like, oh, it's an unspoken rule, so you can't really fight against an unspoken rule because it's not spoken about. So yeah, things like that. So yeah, I really liked it. Really, it kind of got me thinking, got my gears going. But
yeah. And I resonate with that experience of reading something, even if it's in context or not the context, and it just hitting something inside. And I think that's really that's become finding words for the experience of what is happening inside me has become more and more significant in my own life, I think, because it kind of validates it. It kind of gives it an expression and a form that maybe I hadn't quite given it before, or I hadn't quite been in touch with. And I think faith and spirituality has like a large part of it is our connection with ourselves, connection with what's going on inside us at deeper levels, and then our connection to all things, if you like. So I think those words, what you're saying about those words catching something, really resonated. And so, James, I was wondering, you said it wasn't, so it's part of a novel, isn't it?
Yeah, it's part of a series of novels. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it would be useful to catch what the setting in the novel is, or what the.
Yeah, of course. So there is like a spiritual and political. It's kind of like on a religious and political background, science fiction novel, sort of set probably like billions years in the future. Humans have like gone and colonized thousands of other planets and so on. But there's this sense of kind of a feudal system of houses, and the way the universe works is you've got like great houses and lesser houses and so on like that, and an overall empire, and a particular religion has been used to change and shape the current empire and the way it is, and the way that religion has been used. And it started off as quite a it's what seems like quite a good idea and good sort of like moralistic and good sort of like way of being with the world and planets and whatever. It then gets twisted by like the powers that be into like a very totalitarian, can't question, rigid format that just helps to control the populace of the empire. So it's quite a it's quite, I guess quite involved in that respect. It's sort of like not trying to be simple or simplistic. He very much is making a statement, I feel, with it. And there's like a sense of like imperialism and colonization and all of this sort of stuff, and appropriation of culture and stuff. So it's amazing, because I think the novels were written in like the 50s and 60s, and yet he's touching on subjects that are super progressive for us. Like we are, that's like considered like progressive thought and stuff, and it's very ahead of its time. So and I think that's partly why it is good to like have a breadth of reading. I used to hear about different spiritual leaders who wouldn't read anything unless it was like from the Bible, or anything unless it was about the Bible, and I just think, sounds so dry and dull and narrow, and not something I can get behind at all.
And there's a few things that struck me in that quote, but what really struck me was that the ultimate unspoken commandment is thou shalt not question. And how how that can be backed up with so many fears of sorry, I'm just had to find a light and put it on.
Yeah, no,
It's getting dark, so I'm just clearing my desk again.
You said it's that time,
yeah. I know darkness is creeping in. Just how much that, how it can be in churches that, or in any spiritual or any group that's, it's any group that, how it can be that you can, on the outside, on the explicit level, you can be saying, yeah, doubt is okay, questioning is good. But then on the implicit level, it's like, are you going to go to hell? Oh, if you're backsliding. Ooh, we've got to be worried about this person. And you're going to slip down the social ladder or standing here, and you become a bit dodgy.
That's it, and it's stuff that comes from like an unspoken, or if it is spoken about, it's spoken about by like a certain group, or a group who maybe have a certain level of clout. So be they adults or leaders or pastors, whatever, they've got like that. That I suppose that weight to what they're saying and what they believe, that then can become transferred to others, and that becomes then, when it's transferred, there's a what in this statement he says, insistment, which is a word I'd never come across, but I get from it that it means like a kind of a crystallization or a hardening of that. So something that one person said as, oh, I don't know about that. Am I, maybe a bit worried about this or that or the other. Somebody else says, oh, it's bad for that to happen. Or it's bad for us to live like that because, this person will be worried about it. Does that sort of make sense? Like
it's reminding me of systemic therapy. So how systems have this kind of feedback loop to keep homeostasis, or keep and so how, on the explicit level, we can be saying, we can have conversations where we can, or say one thing, but actually maybe implicitly or maybe explicitly as well, like there is some feedback loop, some sort of pressure putting us back into our place, and keeping us there. And I say that because I'm thinking, and I've suddenly realized what I'm saying is, that's dangerous. And it raises the question of, can you grow if you're still in the system? And that's for me, that's a bit of, that's
just feels like shaky ground. Yeah,
that's hurting a bit more because I quite like church still. I still.
But for me, I'm just like gleefully going, yes, this is right. Yeah, totally anti-establishment. I love that. And I think that. It just struck me. I've got I'm sat in my living room here, and I'm sort of surrounded by like an absolute plethora of potted plants, and just the thought of sometimes that's good and it's helpful having the pot there because it protects and it means you've got a safe space to grow. But when you outgrow that, you need either a bigger pot or to be planted out, and that can't happen sometimes. Though that you're being then constricted by what you're in, and that's similar to the system. And it's fine if that system is flexible enough. I'm stretching the metaphor a little bit here, but those like little disintegrating pots that you get for sapling type little things that just disintegrate. That's fine in if that can happen to the container, but if it can't, if it's too ceramic or whatever, then your plant's going to struggle and die, or it might not. I suppose the proper Christianese for it wouldn't bear fruit. Um, so yeah, I think there's there is a sense of, yeah, to an extent it can be helpful to um, have that framework of religion, but then yeah, just going around in circles with this, aren't we?
Yeah,
But you reach a point where maybe you outgrow it, maybe.
yeah, and I really felt that, you know, on my side of things, like how just how precious it would be if a church had the space in
Mm,
it for these questions.
yeah, yeah, it'd be
Uh,
amazing.
if you know, if is that possible? And I hold out hope. I hold out hope.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what you were saying was also linking to this. I've got to look it up. Insistment.
Yeah, insistent.
Like,
What a word, right?
I know it's great. It's great, and I love that we learned a new word today as
I
well.
know, yeah.
And how
Crowbar it into every sentence you can
yeah,
now.
that's it. And just how like so it reminded me of so that insist like you said it was like a protective shell sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
like a larval stage or a chrysalis
yeah,
of things. Yeah.
and how I was struck. I was reminded when you said that about um, Carl Rogers
Mm,
in his idea of the formative tendency, this kind of um, and his idea is that okay, the um, how do I phrase it? We can trust
mm,
when the individual is kind of in touch with all that's going on with the world and themselves. We can trust that they will be moving forward, or there would be this
mm,
kind of energy or movement. Um, and but that movement is either towards growth
mm.
or it's towards maintenance. Um,
Okay. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and how and so I'm just thinking like
Mm,
um, how it can be that um, we can get stuck in a protective stage of maintenance. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and
Because that can feel safe, can't it? There's a safety
yes, yeah,
element
that's
to
what
it.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking. And
yeah.
so I'm kind of thinking, okay, there's the system side, but there's
Mm,
also the individual side of
mm,
actually it's nice to be in the containment.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and it's very difficult to grow.
Yeah, yeah. In a sense, like you know, you grow to fill your space, and anything outside of that can feel like, well, I fit here. Why wouldn't I? Why would I go elsewhere? Why would I push out from there? Because this is safe. There's like I know who I am and where I am and what I am in within this definition within
Yeah.
the walls of this place. Yeah.
And maybe we need that. Maybe
Mm.
that's the stage we need in developing in faith. I
Mm.
think I'm thinking through those sorts of theories about the development of faith and spirituality, and the ones I've come across seem to have this stage at the start where you are finding your place in that community and you're learning
Mm.
about the community, and then there needs to be that space to question and to doubt and to um, push against it.
Yeah, yeah. It's reminding me like massively. Was it? I'm going to get the person's name wrong. Was it Brenner or I can't remember. There was one of the guys who we looked at and we read, and he was talking about the uh, life stages of faith, and
Mm,
we looked at it in conjunction with human stages of development.
mm,
So you've kind of got this like early stage development of infancy, then you get and it grow through childhood into like adolescence and then into maturity, and how he had that framed in the three stages of spirituality as well. So you've got your institutionalized church, which is like the infancy childhood stage where you need these firm, hard and fast rules. Then you need for your faith to grow, like that ability to question, which is what I suppose we're talking about at the moment, and that's the adolescence, the kind of what would be considered in inverted commas rebellious stage, because it's questioning, it's kind of going, well, why is that true? Why do we believe this? Why? And the questioning, and then into a stage of maturity where you're comfortable with the questions, the unanswered, the answered, the sort of like disparities, the tensions, etc. And you kind of found your own harmony with or peace with your own faith, and that's sort of like the mature stage of faith. And I suppose what this statement looks at and is focusing on is a bit on that questioning section.
Yeah.
And I really wonder if, sorry to cut across you, really wonder if that is possible for that to happen in a church, which is by nature an institution. Can that happen? And I don't know. Maybe it can. I would love to think it can.
So that, for me, another question came, but I think yours is a bit more meatier. So I'm going to come back to yours in a moment. But the other question I had was, how does a church do that and cater for this earlier developmental need? How does it do both?
Essentially, it's the same thing. Yeah. Same question. Yeah.
But yeah, the institution, as I was reminded, very different sphere of thought. But I was reminded of. You talk about imperialism and colonialism, and I was
listening
to a podcast on decolonizing the curriculum. So,
nice,
decolonizing education. And this guy, wait, hold on. I think the podcast is called Teaching Matters by the University of Edinburgh. So anybody can look it up. This guy was saying that to decolonize, you need to firstly recognize like your own history of colonization, and how that's impacted what your view of knowledge is, or your view of truth is.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And then you need a second bit, which is actually listening. So colonization puts people at, like, silences people, certain types of people, and it disempowers them, or strips them of a voice. And how the other part of decolonization needs to be listening to those parts that have kind of been stripped, silenced, or pushed to the edges, or oppressed even because of it, and listen to what they have to say. And it's kind of like this decentering from this is the truth, and we've got to be here.
Based on like one perspective, so it's like rebalancing, because you've got a very skewed sort of like viewpoint, and going, well, hang on a sec, that's what we've heard from here, so we need to kind of go, well, shut up a minute about that. What's going on over here, and what all of these people got to say about what you're saying? Okay, and just to get a broader spectrum.
And it's all part of this recognition that we're socially embedded, or like our theories of knowledge and our religions are also so embedded in
colonization,
in our culture, and British culture is colonization.
100%.
And we think of, like, the glory days of Britain, but those glory days were colonizing was
horrendous.
It was, and it was horrendous what we did to other countries, and how we just used and extracted everything from them. And the mess that we've caused, actually, in
and kind of it's still going on,
politics.
Right? It's still
like
the aftermath of all of that is still happening.
So I guess this, and maybe this is where like we come back to where we began, is that I think in my journey, I've slowly built up the confidence to question, and I've slowly built up the confidence to realize kind of how religion and how my own religious, background is so impacted by cultural forces. And then as another step, listening to what others have to say who aren't quite in the middle, and aren't quite, like you said about those pastors that only read the Bible and what is said about the Bible, like that. And so, yeah, I guess part of that reconstruction for me is hearing the words of others that seem to really resonate with what's going on inside me. And also I reckon so far resonate with what the Bible seems to be saying. At least from what I can.
It's those shreds of enlightenment, isn't it? It's where it kind of touches like those points, and we go, oh yeah, I get that kind of links to me. Links to truth on the greater sense, not just this narrow sort of like this is what's been told as being truth, but truth when it hits us and hits like our centre point. And I'd love to know if that's true for people from different cultures as well, or is that different? My sense is that maybe it would be, but that's a massive assumption. I don't know if it is. Yeah.
What do you mean, James?
So like, when I found that passage and it sort of made me go, oh, that kind of links. I can relate to that, and I guess that it linked to me or related. I related to it because I've gone through this kind of sense of deconstruction and sort of concept of, hang on, church isn't quite right. I believe in something that God is real, but I don't know how well God links to church, or whether, do I refer to God as he or she or they, or I still believe that Jesus was real and is God, and so all of this like messy like building blocks which I'm left with after deconstruction, they like kind of ping when I encounter something that when one of those parts of me that I still hold as like, well, I still believe that, the bits I've decided to keep as opposed to discard, when there's something that kind of triggers inside me, like when I read that passage, I wonder if that happens for people of other cultures, if they've got some form of spiritual life, spiritual way of thinking, being, experiencing, expressing, etc. All of like the things that I would like consider my faith. Whether they have a similar experience when they encounter something that resonates, I think is the best word. And I suppose, I've got my cousins who I've spoken to a little bit about this, who and they are from a Muslim background, and they have like a different expression of faith, and yet when I talk to them on a deeper level of like, about praying and what they experience and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, well, that's the same thing. There's no real difference there. And again, with another cousin of mine who hasn't got a Christian background at all, but has got faith and has got this real deep connection to something. So his culture is very, very different, and his way of life and where he's come from is very, very different. But he has got, like, when we speak about spirituality, we're completely talking the same language, and it feels like we're talking the same language from different ends, if you like, or different angles. I don't know really where I was going with that. It felt like I had a bit more to say, but yeah, I suppose my question would be really, do people have that if they've come from a different place, but surely, yeah. So I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, I guess it's and it's always tricky because when you universalize things, you tread on the steps of colonialism, don't you? So with hesitancy, let's say, with
exactly.
doubt,
with doubt, with a good healthy dose of doubt,
yeah,
which we do need a lot of. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think I'd say my feeling is yes. It's because I think this is part of growing up, and whether cultures have an explicit space for religion or whether the religious or spirituality is just embedded in their culture. My feeling is that many cultures need, or people in many cultures need this to develop, to grow. They will get to this point of having to question everything and work out where the pieces fit. Now, how much of Christian teaching then resonates with them, I'm even more dubious. And part of it is also like, I wonder where conversion comes in with that.
Yes, well, exactly.
And
yeah. So
I guess it could be one or the other. It could be a resonance, or it could be a bringing into just a different system.
Yeah. I was gonna say exactly that. That's why I was smiling. It's like, so for me, like, one of the things that I've discarded, I suppose, as part of my deconstruction process is the whole concept of conversion, and to a greater extent, evangelism. I don't know if I have to go and tell everybody about what I believe. I don't agree with that. To me, to a lesser or greater extent, that is colonialism. There's a colonial aspect of that. It's like, come and believe what I believe. What I believe is right. Is it really? I mean, I'm not even sure about that. Why would I evangelize? But I think what I'd love is for people to have spiritual experience and the freedom of spiritual expression, where they're like, where their relationship with themselves and with others is just on a much deeper level. And I don't think you can get that from I think you get. Oh, I'm going to say things that I don't really agree with. I think maybe. I think that, having where you're having to get people to agree with you about how things are, or what spirituality should look like and ought to be. That's where you kind of start to lose it, because for one person, their expression of faith is going to be through song or through dance or through music or something like that. For somebody else, it's through complete silence, and there isn't like a connection there. It's just that this person doesn't relate in that way, or doesn't connect in that way. And I mean, that's like, I'm distilling it down. It's a very reductive statement, but again, started off strong with that statement, with where I was going there, and it kind of petered out and I lost my way. Yeah,
I think
standard James. I think that. Yeah.
No, I like it. I feel that link between, or the fear, at least, or the churning up inside of the link between evangelism and imperialism. And how much we don't use force these days to convert people.
No.
But how much
overt,
how much how much is going on inside us of like, well, these are the uneducated, or these are the ones,
Or
if only they thought it through enough, or if only they were
the,
more
the
logical.
the unenlightened or whatever.
Yeah.
This whole sort of concept of the ones with the knowledge and the ones without, which to an extent I suppose is Gnosticism, isn't it? Because it's like this. Oh, I've got a hidden knowledge that this person doesn't have, and actually it's not necessarily true.
And I'm not convinced that was evangelism in the early church.
No, I don't really get it in the early church, but
Yeah.
it obviously happened. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
James, one powerful voice in my head is coming through from my early days.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued how you respond to this. Why should we get to decide what to believe? Are we, if God's revealed what to believe in the Bible, why should we then get to decide according to our experience what's right and what's wrong?
So hang on, if God's revealed, say that bit again. If God's revealed.
So what we've been saying, I guess, about this development of faith, seems to involve we become the deciders of what we believe.
Right. Yeah. So yeah.
And voices in my head from history, James, are pressing in.
Pressing in. And hang on a second.
Yeah. So, like, what? What's the? Do we have a right to that? Do we have a right to that? What gives us the? Gives us the. I don't know. Arrogance,
the right to
maybe.
Question. The right to question.
To
question. I think it's really it's valid. I suppose it sounds like nature as humans, as part of our creation, part of our makeup of who we are, to be curious, to explore, to question, like from the youngest age when we can first speak. Probably the first question we ever ask is why, which I think is super telling. That it's why. Why is this like this is? Why? I suppose as children we're not. It's less less like the answer we're getting each time is more like the connection, the relationship that we're testing that relationship, right, by asking why, because the parent invariably after a while probably does lose patience. You probably know more about this than I
do. They do.
but they're asking why. They're like, because I need to know that you're there. I need to know that there is somebody answering. There is an answer to an extent, and an answerer, I think, is more important. And so I think, the Bible is a great way to see how other people have asked that question, and asked lots of questions, and the answers, and the way that God and the greater kind of like the higher power has answered. But I don't think it is exclusively the only way to see that, because I think there are people who might never encounter the Bible, might never be able to encounter the Bible for whatever reason, and or have been hurt so badly in spiritual environments that's actually really unhelpful. And yet God isn't alien or against them. It isn't because they, oh, you haven't read my book, well, I hate you. I don't think he's like that. I really don't. Don't think that goes on. To start with, I don't really believe that God's the author of it. I think he's certainly inspired sections of it, and it is inspired in some respects from the point of view of but it's I was speaking to a friend, and it's funny because I kind of thought about this before. Was speaking to a friend about how the Bible is. It's a timely thing. It's a time thing. You read the same bit of the Bible at one part in your life, and it just brings absolute chaos and death and destruction. You read the same bit at another point in your life, and it's just life bringing. And it at the time I was at a very like anti-Bible phase, and I still, I guess, am to a lesser or greater extent. Um, but it made me go, okay, yeah, no, I do know what you mean because I've experienced that. But then there will be people who don't get that sort of, oh, it's really feeding me at the moment. Um, so yeah, so and I guess that it's not with the Bible. It's not a it's a collection of loads of different stories and different books and different poems and songs, etc., and teachings and whatnot, and histories and stuff. But it's not like it's funny because we fixed it into this one book, and it's like, well, it's good all the time, but it's massive, isn't it? And there's loads to it. It's not one particular one thing. It's a collection. It's a library. That's what the word means, library. So I suppose my response to that would be is that yes, we've got some of the answers there, and that's great. If you find the answers there, don't stop looking. Keep questioning, keep asking, and it's not we're not asking to be satisfied, but I think it's part of us. It's part of who we are as humans. In the same way that plants are designed and made to grow, we are designed and made to question. Is I guess partly why we are human. You know,
I
yeah.
really was not expecting that, James,
No,
and I
I
love
wasn't
it.
either. That
I
came out
love
of
it.
nowhere.
That and it links back to the quote of
Yeah.
talking about imagination and creativity and
Yeah.
questioning, that there is something, there feels something in us that wants to grow, wants to emerge, wants to reach out.
Yeah.
What I also really struck me was that you framed it in a relationship,
Mm.
like this reaching out. Is there an answer?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if in a relationship there is the testing of boundaries of if things can be tolerated.
Mm. Yeah.
Does will I still answer my son even when he's doing X, Y, or Z, or even
Yeah.
when he's acting out or whatever it is? Can I tolerate that? And that's nothing to do. That's very little to do with what's right and wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's do we have a relationship that can tolerate this?
Yeah.
Can I trust this
Yeah.
relationship? And a bit cheekily, I want to say maybe God can tolerate much more than we think.
Oh, yeah. I 100% think so. Yeah. 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 The fact
God,
that we still exist, I think, is sort of like evidence that he can tolerate quite a lot.
Yeah, and that really brings for me to something that's at the heart of my faith, of that relationship with God, and my where faith has been a real struggle is that I don't think God can tolerate things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And maybe like an uncertainty there. Yeah.
Yeah, an uncertainty. Yeah. And that fixes me in place, doesn't it? That keeps me in the small plant plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that maybe God can tolerate me questioning, but he can also tolerate it if I get to the wrong answer. Which I'm not sure churches can always do. Maybe they can tolerate questioning, but if you get to the wrong answer at the end of that question, then it becomes
maybe they
problematic.
can't tolerate that. Yeah, that's too disparate, too like wrong, if you like.
Yeah.
And I suppose it again, this sort of like, it really does relate to my the deconstruction that I kind of where I'm at the moment, because I kind of don't think of things in terms of right and wrong any longer, because it's so black and white. It's like it doesn't leave room for the questioning, for the going, well, actually, I don't know what's right and wrong. What I do know is that some things are better and some things aren't so good. So it's not so good for me to be promiscuous and just like living my life purely for the like the hit that I'm going to get, just like whatever is going to satisfy my immediate instant desire. That actually, it doesn't leave me feeling great, and it doesn't really help or edify others, but other things do. And so, well, maybe I'll spend my time and energy more in that direction rather than this sort of like purely hedonistic way of living. And I mean, that's just an example. There's probably like countless things that I do and the ways I live that are based on just like, well, this feels slightly better than this, so I'll go with that. And it kind of like that, by being better, the kind of way I gauge it is like, well, what does it bring? What does it what does it like give? And I suppose the Christianese of that is, what would the fruit be? What does it generate? What does it produce? And that's how I would gauge things, rather than and so for me, like, questioning is amazing, because suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm not necessarily getting answers, but I'm getting way more interesting questions, and actually, growing and exploring and finding out that other people have got these questions or different questions as well, and that by having conversation, we don't necessarily conclude them, but we find some semblance of answer or some satisfaction in having asked them. Some sense of the answerer. The responder.
Yeah.
I suppose. All right. Yeah.
Great.
It's weird.
I feel like we're coming to an end, James. Or maybe I feel like that I'm waning. Although I've really loved it and feel energized. I can feel mental exhaustion creeping in as well.
No, it does that to me as well.
And I'm struck by how, we started off saying we're taking a break from taboos, and we've ended talking about British imperialism.
So totally connected, right? Totally connected.
Yeah.
I'd love to read what you're reading. It sounds amazing.
Oh, it's good.
Amazing.
It's good.
Good
thanks again, James. And thanks all that have viewed and watched. Do send us your comments, and we'll be back again next week. Okay. Take care, everyone.
See you later. Bye.